numbers? Where is it strongest? Just looking for chapter and verse on whatever intelligence you have on it right now.
So one of the things we're dealing with the Delta is that we haven't got the same live time surveillance tool that we did with the so-called PCR related to the B117, it used to be called UK, now called Alpha, different names, and with the P1 as well as the 135. So we're having to use whole genome sequencing, which is slow and laborious. And so we're going to have to use some measurements to give a best approximation. So we're getting valuable input from Public Health Ontario in that. And our best measurements would say, with sequencing, we're in the 440 range with what we sequenced so far over the last while, and some go back a number of weeks. So we know it's in, around, and moving. It tends to be concentrated more in our larger urban centers. That's not surprising, as in Toronto and Peel, as well as some other larger urban centers. We've had a few clusters outside as well. And we've had some concerns with an outbreak related to a mine in Nunavut that has spread a number of cases around Ontario. So we're continuing to watch those. With our measurement system, it may be the numbers are probably higher than that, and that's why you're hearing some percents being projected in certain areas as it becomes more increasingly prominent. Some of our percent projections say it moved up from 12% up to 17% and maybe even up to 23%, but those numbers are rising as our volume of tests drop down. It'll be interesting to see what it shows with these higher numbers over these last few days. So I can't give you a precise number except to say it is rising, and we're seeing it more prominent in our large urban centers, as well as it has shown itself around in different areas in the province. So it's not just located, isolated to those ones alone. And we're continuing to improve on our ability to move through the whole genome sequencing as much as our laboratories can expedite that and still doing the quality work. So we'll be updating you as soon as we can with more and more detail, but it certainly has been helpful to get their further analysis on it that gives an idea of that it's maybe more prominent than we had seen, even as the prominent one before, the B117 UK, is dropping down.
Next question.
Your next question comes from David Woodard from AM 640. David, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. I was hoping for some clarity, Dr. Williams. You say that it's a rise in daily case counts, but because there were more tests as well, which resulted in lower positivity rate, is it really higher numbers, or is it just that we're seeing basically, the accumulation of, more tests being done equaling more positive tests?
You're almost listening to our discussions that we have each day. And we ask the same question. If we see the volumes going down and the positivity going up, that would be indicative that we're just not doing enough, or we're not doing as many tests. It's been interesting to us that we're seeing the volumes go down and the percent positivity go down at the same time. And so we're always attentive to that, the point you're raising. Are we getting a good picture or true picture as the volumes go down? Plus, we're going to ask ourselves, how are the hospitalization rates? Are they dropping off as well? And there's other ways to measure those impacts around, because very ill people will still go and get seen. And so I would say that the positivity dropping down, even as the volumes drop down, is reassuring in that. And so I like to see them both go in parallel. So I think you raised a very good point. That's why I said I wanted to see what happens with the numbers over the weekend coming up to see if the general trend is the same as other weeks, or are we seeing a larger surge due to the Victoria Day weekend in that to give us better advice for the early part of next week. But thank you for that question.
Follow up?
Thank you. And on grad parties, Dr. Williams, it seems like it was a bit of surprise to many local public health units and school boards on the Premier's announcement yesterday. I wanted to know if you were consulted on the idea, and if not, do you think it's a good idea to gather students and parents for year-end parties?
So I understand this is something I know that the Premier is very wanting to do, I think, because it's been a tough year for students in general, for all levels, and that's why I think he was wanting to have something for end of year get together somehow for the students for all grades. And that's a major undertaking. In there, I've been, our public health people have been consulted at this time on how might or could that occur. It's a challenging issue to undertake with measures in place at the same time. There are different people that are apprehensive about it. I would depend heavily on the knowledge base of boards of education because you're dealing with unique situations in different areas. I think, as I have in the past when I've had issues at the local level, I really depend on the knowledge base of principals who know their community, who know their schools and know their parents as well as staff on how to undertake that. While it's a good idea, I think there's ways that they might be able to do it that's still safe in that and still meet that kind of sort of end-of-year type activity. I can't see it be the same as the usual ones in the past with the so-called proms and different celebratory events. This would be more of a diploma or a completion time with more restrictions around distancing and masking and spacing. And so there's a lot of logistics to be worked out, and no doubt quite different in different parts of the province and different areas as you deal with well over 2 million students and 5,000 schools. So it's an undertaking that is not taken lightly, but understanding the sense of, for some way to mark the end of the year, at the same time understanding the apprehensions of parents, students, and perhaps staff as well. So it's an issue that we're trying to see how to endeavor to undertake that and to bring all those things into consideration at this time.
Last question.
Your last question comes from Holly Mackenzie Sutter from the Canadian Press. Holly, please go ahead.
Hi, question for Dr. Heyer. The health minister was saying today that the vaccine task force is looking at moving up second doses for everyone. Just wondering if that means the second dose priority is going to be based on age for everyone now rather than the date of first dose. So just hoping you can explain more about what exactly is actually being considered right now.
Sure. I can't speak specifically to what Minister Elliott said, but from a task force perspective, what we're looking at all times is, with more supply, can we move the second doses forward? And we have a plan to move people who are over 80 are eligible to book right now. And as you know, the next group is the 70 to 79. And then what we've done is we've put groupings together based upon when people received their vaccine so that we can replicate the approach that was taken with the first doses being provided. And so it's whether we have more supply, we can move those allotment or those groups closer or to the left. So it's really compressing the time frame between the first and second dose overall, but it really would be based upon our supply and based upon the delivery to first doses, because we're still balancing first and second doses in a number of areas across the province where the allocations were different and where the populations are different. So it's thinking about things holistically, but thinking about shifting the pieces one bit at a time as we have greater supply and as we know there will be availability for those different tranches.
Follow up, and this is the last question.
So I guess people aren't going to be offered shots based on a different criteria. It's going to follow the same groupings based on dates, if that's what you're saying. And hoping you could also say whether task force is looking at, maybe prioritizing essential workers sooner, as has been also discussed in light of the variant threat.
Yeah, so at this particular point, there's always discussions. Everything with the pandemic changes based upon data and about discussions that we have at the moment. But currently, the understanding that I have is that we are continuing along the replication of the first, which was focused on age and at risk, as we wanted to make sure that those who are at greatest individual risk are provided the earliest opportunity to have the best protection. And then moving from that would be then those who would be at risk by where they live, so congregate settings and other situations, or geographically in the hotspots, and those were all prioritized through the first phase, and similarly they would be moved forward as the dose interval narrows by the tranches of when they were provided that vaccine. So at this point, that's the structure and the strategy that we have, which again focuses on age and at risk.
Thanks, everyone.